Welcome back, Santa Clarita Valley. We're here on SCV Sheriff Talk. I'm KHTS News Director Perry Smith. In the studio with me is my co-host Shirley Miller from the Santa Clarita Valley Sheriff Station, and our two special guests, Deputy Cherry from the Parks Bureau and Sergeant Marr from the Burglary Robbery Task Force with the Major Crimes Bureau.
That's a long thing to say. What is the acronym for it? It's like
BRTF, and we're proud of it.
BRTF.
BRTF.
It's not the catchiest acronym, if I'm being honest with you.
It's not. We did have, we were the Serial Home Invasion Robbery Team, and that was SHIRT. And we weren't too big on that.
No, BRT is better.
BRT is better, yeah.
So you have a kind of a unique position, and I don't mean to be to get too excited, but I get really excited because you go undercover and you do the stuff that people see in movies and you know, Serpico and De Niro type stuff. It's really cool. Talk to me a little bit about the process when you go undercover. How do you mentally prepare for that? I mean, is it completely different process for every time you get that assignment? What's your process?
First of all, I'm the luckiest deputy in the county as a sergeant working major crimes. So very fortunate. We are not undercover. We consider ourselves plainclothed. Okay. Which is different, and the difference there is undercover, and there are some tremendous undercover detectives at Major Crimes Bureau where they assume an identity and take that identity. As a plainclothes investigator or detective, we simply just try to blend in. Okay. So we are not undercover necessarily, but plainclothed. And with that goes trying to unlearn policeman behavior, the policeman jargon, the stereotypical look, walk, swagger, trying to be your average Joe citizen.
And when you say blend in, I mean, like you said, you're not undercover, you don't have a false identity, but you're still not posing as an officer, you're posing as an average, like you said, just blending in.
Correct.
So you might be like a witness to stuff or just like there on the scene?
We have every right and positive duty to take police action when appropriate. So that is part of the tightrope walk, meaning I try to look like your standard guy every day of the week, but at a moment's notice I need to be immediately recognizable as a police officer and be immediately prepared to take whatever action is necessary. So as we go through our daily business, we're driving in plainclothes cars. You would never know the pickup trucks and VW bugs and the cars we drive in. But as I get out of a car when the moment is appropriate, I am going to be clearly identifiable as a police officer, whether it be a vest like this, badge and markings, with all the required gear to take the appropriate action necessary.
So when you're doing the longer term investigations, is it a lot of I mean, I know it's a lot of research and not always like car chases, right, and that kind of stuff.
It's far fewer car chases than many of us would prefer, but a tremendous amount of work on the front end. I expect from a demand of myself and my detectives that we know as much information possible about the prospective suspects we're following, so the questions are answered before we even have contact. Our goal is to effect an arrest during a crime in progress. And that doesn't mean that we're trying to allow crimes to occur and not involving ourselves. But as you may know, oftentimes we suspect people of committing crimes but don't have the probable cause to make an arrest. We will spend hours upon hours of investigation and surveillance until they then begin to commit that crime, where we have to go from average Joe wallpaper look immediately to a tactical response.
Now, I had a question going back to the knock-knock burglaries. You said that their MO was to pull up right in front of the house and go up to the door, ring the doorbell. Now, is there a second party that's involved with this? Like that person is just the one that's checking to see if anybody's home or not?
Correct. So a standard or a typical flocking crew would encompass one or two or three or more. You would have a driver. You would have one or two people approach the house with the door knock to see if somebody's home. Usually they're on the phone with the driver. Constant communication, whether it be verbally or through text messages, and they coordinate the entrance into the house. The person in the car is clearly the getaway driver, but also the lookout on the street.
Now, it used to be that people, like, if someone came to the door, rang the doorbell, and they didn't want to talk to them, they just would ignore it. They wouldn't open up the door. But is that necessarily the best advice for today?
That's not my advice. My advice is to make yourself known. If you are home and somebody knocks on your door, I strongly suggest that you make yourself known.
Because if you make out that you're not at home and you turn down the TV and you're really quiet, then you actually are possibly setting yourself up for a burglary.
For what then becomes a home invasion robbery, certainly the stakes become much higher when somebody's home.
Right. And Ashley, our student worker who's with us today, she took a self-defense class over at College of the Canyons. And I know, Ashley, you want to share my mic and share what they told you about answering the door?
Yeah, when I took the class, they basically said, make yourself known, like you said, basically saying, I'm not interested, or please go away, until they basically go away.
Sure.
So they know that you're there and that someone doesn't come to the back of the door and come inside and then it would become a robbery. So
Great advice.
Exactly.
Yep. Great advice. So the thought there is, you know, and I do it too, I want to ignore the folks at my door. You have no cause to even be courteous inside your own home. Tell them to get off your porch. Tell them to leave. Tell them I'm not interested. Tell them I'm afraid and I'm calling the police. Once you make yourself known, in the knock-knock world, it's not 100% nothing is, they are going to leave. They are trying to be unencountered. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be noticed.
Get attention. They don't want to get photographed.
They don't want to be photographed. And typically we find that they won't run away. They'll ask for somebody, a false name. They'll give
pretend they had a reason.
Yeah, of course, and walk away. What I do ask then is for residents to be appropriately suspicious. I don't think people need to be paranoid. Santa Clarita is a very, very safe town. Appropriately suspicious. If you see something, say something. And I mentioned
Right.
to Perry, that's
Yes.
it's somewhat of a ridiculous cliche, but it's an awesomely true cliche too. If you see something, say something.
So if someone suspicious comes to your door, by all means, call the Santa Clarita Sheriff's Station, 661-255-1121, and just ask if a deputy can do a patrol check in your area.
Absolutely. Take a note of a license plate if you can, a vehicle description.
And there's always a way you can network with your neighbors using Nextdoor, which is endorsed by the Sheriff's Department now. It's a social media network. People can get on there, send messages to their neighbors, let their neighbors know if they saw something suspicious, or, you know, like you said, the patrol checks are big with the city too. I think that's a great resource. I want to ask a little bit about how the technology has changed your position, and I think that's there's probably some new insights we can share there. We've got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS, for SCV Sheriff Talk, brought to you by All American Bail Bonds. Welcome back, Santa Clarita Valley. We're here on SCV Sheriff Talk, and as Shirley just mentioned, we are still accepting suggestions for our new theme music.
Theme song,
It's a work in progress. As great as the Naked Gun movie series is, we can...
Right, and I think Sarge just said he liked heavy metal, so I don't know if we can do that.
Do we have any heavy metal pro law enfortement anthems? Because that's what we're looking for.
I'll find one.
I'm listening.
Judas Priest breaking the law.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put that one
Pro law enforcement anthem we're looking for? I'm not sure. So we were just talking about the burglary robbery task force and for the Major Crimes Bureau in the Sheriff's Department, and a little bit about. I wanted to ask you about how technology has kind of changed that, because I know, like you said, what the Major Crimes Bureau's burglary robbery task force does is take cases that have been worked on and then identified as like an ongoing series of crimes, right? So how does technology factor into your guys' investigations, and how has that changed? I would guess that with computers, internet growth, we've seen a lot more of that.
Sure. If you look around your neighborhood here in Santa Clarita, red light cameras, traffic cameras, surveillance videos on businesses and stores, the proliferation of now people having home surveillance cameras and home security systems.
Cell phones?
Cell phones as well. Sure, absolutely.
I thought you said selfies. You said
selfies too.
Yeah, sometimes the crooks take selfies of themselves committing the crime.
It sounds ridiculous, Shirley, but we have several cases where we have actually introduced social media of our suspects, where they're inside, for instance, your home, holding up your jewelry, taking a picture of themselves.
Taking a selfie, right. And I've heard about cases where they will steal an iPad and then somehow it's still hooked up to iCloud.
Correct.
And then they're taking pictures and the victim gets it.
Correct. And your cell phone is stolen, or a product is stolen, and it has the Find Your Phone feature, those sort of things. Tremendous assets for us.
Well, one case we saw, like their cloud had like pictures of somebody else. It's like it wasn't their phone.
Correct.
And they were like looking at it like, hey, it's not me.
Correct. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, not me. But nothing has replaced good old-fashioned police work, beating the streets, talking to people, interviews, interrogations, hours and hours of static and mobile surveillance. But modern technology has become a great tool for law enforcement.
Where is it playing the biggest help for you? Is it with, like you said, criminal self-reporting on social media?
You know, much of that stuff.
We don't want to give away too much.
Yeah, I'd really rather not talk about. But it has become, technology in general has become a great advantage for law enforcement.
And what I think is important is what is the best way that homeowners can protect their house?
Certainly. So for me, again, it comes down to some common sense, making yourself known at home. If you are away at work and the kids are at school, and there's many folks that aren't home during the day, a radio on, AM radio. This station here, KHTS.
Go ahead, KHTS, AM 1220.
Playing at your house, at a moderate volume, as if somebody's home.
Yeah, moderate volume.
Moderate volume.
Doesn't just keep the dog company. It's great
right.
for
A dog is
good idea. Get a dog.
Dog is a great deterrent as well. Again, we find
doesn't matter on the size of the dog either, right? Because as long as they're yappy.
It's the sound of the bark, not the size of the bite.
I like.
We find that these knock-knock burglars and the active, prolific burglars are trying to be undetected. They do not want to come across a barking dog to alert a neighbor. Security systems. There's a plethora of security systems all over, from high-end armed response security companies to digital and electronic security systems you can have for your house, all of which are good. What I do suggest is a surveillance camera will only record the crime that occurred at your house, and that's great for me as a detective. But me as a homeowner, I want something to keep people out of my house.
Right.
So something that makes noise.
I don't know why, but I just thought it's like so off topic. I was thinking about the Home Alone movie when Kevin was like trying to pretend that people were there and there were like the cardboard silhouettes.
Pulling the strings and things were moving the windows.
Okay, well, we don't have to go to that extent.
No.
But
appropriately suspicious, not paranoid. That's paranoid.
So there is a fine line there.
I think so.
And one of the things we were talking about before the show was some of the really cool cases that you guys have done. You had mentioned one case with, as far as it was through work. The person was exploiting information from work to create a series of burglaries. Can we talk about that case?
Sure, absolutely.
It kind of seemed like something you read about. It was almost so.
It was amazing. So we had a police officer in the San Gabriel Valley made a traffic stop of a parolee, a guy on parole who had an odd list of addresses on his person. One of my detectives got a hold of that list and began to do some research, and lo and behold, there's 9 addresses, and out of the 9, maybe 8 had been burglarized recently.
Wow.
A long, intensive investigation determined, and these were not South LA gang members. This was a prolific crew that probably for years had committed hundreds and hundreds of residential burglaries. He was a sort of a periphery, this parolee, a periphery contract employee to the LA Times, and LA Times was very supportive in our investigation, where he, in the overnight hours, would go to the LA Times distribution centers and essentially a maintenance man, but he would be able to walk by the wall that held people's vacation lists. And what's important about that, and for people to know, is information is valuable. Be careful about who you share your information with. So ultimately, you would call the LA Times and hold your paper delivery. Well, they hold it, and there's a list that shows where not to deliver. He had access to those for years, and for years he and his crew would then spend days cleaning out houses. And a funny quote of mine in that time when that investigation came out was, they took everything from the toothbrush to the television, and they cleaned out houses.
And they had the confidence of knowing that nobody was going to be there.
Sure, they stayed in the house and stayed overnight. And
oh, jeez.
Information is valuable. I caution people about holding their mail when they're gone. Use a neighbor or a friend.
Right. And also the Santa Clarita Sheriff's Station, we do offer vacation checks. If you're going to be on vacation, you can submit a request through a secure site at the City of Santa Clarita's website, and we can have someone drive by your house while you're on vacation.
It's a great idea as well. Yep. And ultimately, there were several people taken into custody on this. Several storage bin lockers, large storage lockers of property recovered, and significant prison sentences for all involved.
Well, happy ending.
Happy ending.
We want to talk a little bit about, I wanted to ask you about the process for people when they get robbed or burglarized, how they can recover their stuff. We mentioned that. And some other information. We have a question from SCV Emergency Now. It's going to be coming after the break, but we got to take a quick commercial break on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS for SCV Sheriff Talk, brought to you by All American Bail Bonds. Welcome back, Santa Clarita Valley. We're here on SCV Sheriff Talk, and KHTS News Director Perry Smith. In the studio with me is my co-host Shirley Miller from the Santa Clarita Valley Sheriff Station, and our two special studio guests, Deputy Tim Cherry, sticking it out with us from the Parks Bureau. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us about what's going on and staying safe for Labor Day weekend coming up. And Sergeant Marr from the Burglary Robbery Task Force of the Major Crimes Bureau of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, who was just talking about safety and basically one of the reasons we do this show is to spread the information about public safety and awareness, and so people don't become victims. And we have a member of one of our local groups on Facebook that is very involved in reporting information and sharing information with the public, which is SCV Emergency Now. And Carrie, you are one of the admins of that group. Can you please introduce yourself for our listeners?
Good morning, Perry. How you doing, Shirley?
Good morning.
We're great. Thanks for coming on and calling in. And you have a question from your readership for the group SCV Emergency Now. And real quick, if you can let our listeners know what the group is all about.
SCV Emergency Now, if you've not heard of us, we're a community-based emergency prevention preparedness organization. We disseminate information as it comes out from our credible sources from the local agencies, and we get it out to our members in hopes that we've made some sort of difference within the community when it comes to, like we were discussing today, the crime prevention, the home burglaries, and what have you, which is actually right now kind of at the forefront of conversation within our groups.
Sure, I know. I see a lot of the conversation. I mean, I follow the conversations on there as well too, and I've seen some of the discussion. Carrie, what's maybe a question we can ask our deputies here in the studio today?
Recently, we've seen a lot of our members recommending security measures that they've taken up when it comes to people scurrying around their property or stealing mail or doing the doorbell ringing, and then, if you don't answer the door, they help themselves to your home. And so there's a product called the Ring doorbell that's got a video camera in it, and I don't have one for my home. It's kind of up there on the list, but I understand that it sends video relay through your cell phone, records video. And I was actually very curious to know, we always recommend that our members contact lacrimestoppers.org if something has taken place. Maybe they weren't home at the moment that it took place. Maybe they're out of town. They're not sure how to get that information to the Sheriff's Department. So we always recommend that they go to lacrimestoppers.org. I'm wondering, when we've got members who have this video information or pictures, is it useful for them to go through lacrimestoppers.org? Is there a way for them to upload that information? And is that useful to you guys?
Well, I'd like to answer that first. I can't endorse any particular product, but I do employ several devices similar to what you mentioned at my own home. The information that we've gathered over the years from devices like you're talking about are incredibly valuable to us in the investigation, whether it be following up on a crime that has occurred or just the information that somebody was scurrying around the neighborhood, a vehicle that was seen on camera, so we can go forward in our investigation going forward. That being said, I suggest you contact your local station. Crime Stoppers is an incredible resource, but that would be secondary to contacting your local station directly and getting a hold of an investigator, detective, or a deputy who will come out and take that information from you. Those devices, and there are many different kinds, they're all sort of similar platforms. You can share the videos, you can share the pictures via email and text. And eventually that will work its way to a team like mine if it does become a prolific problem. But please go directly to your local station first.
And if I can add on that, Sergeant Marr, one of the advantages that you had just mentioned to us before about going to the zone leader is that, the zone leader's covering that area, and they'll know, like, if you're in Canyon Country West and that's where your crime is reported, if there's been a series, because
Correct.
They look at that stuff and they follow that, and then they would, again, like you said, forward it on to you, right?
Correct.
Right, and if you're not sure who your zone leader is, you can go to the Santa Clarita Valley Sheriff's website, and there's a link on the left side that says Find Your Zone Leader. So if you click on there and you put your address in, up will come your zone leader's name, phone number, and email address.
And I do, on a personal note, I follow social media very closely, especially here in our local area, and I appreciate what you do, and I've seen and gleaned valuable information just off of your site.
Oh, fantastic.
Yep.
Great news. That's
got to be good
what
to
our
know.
goal
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yes, and wasn't it your group that put something about National Preparedness Month today?
Yep, that was us. We
that's
actually,
great.
We have a group from Virginia that reached out and asked us if they could come in and glean information out of our group because we've apparently made our way back east. So.
Awesome.
That's good. Awesome.
Well, we love to spread information about public safety and help support that, so we appreciate your help with that, Carrie.
Very good. Thanks for having me. You guys have a great day.
Great.
All right, you too. Thanks for calling. So great information there. Then again, just a couple reminders, if we can, about Labor Day. Do we have any tips for safety, Deputy? Just parting words for our listeners, as far as just a message we can send them about being safe on Labor Day.
Just be careful. I mean,
be careful out there.
Use common sense, control your alcohol intake, and pay attention to your surroundings.
All right.
Designated drivers, whether it's a vehicle or whether it's a boat.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. You guys, we appreciate your time and coming in.
Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Us.
Yeah, thank you.
And you can watch the video up on our Facebook page or on our YouTube. We'll have the full broadcast later on. But this has been SCV Sheriff Talk with your host, KHTS News Director Perry Smith and Shirley Miller, Sheriff Station PIO, on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.